Alright, WABYA here. Going to do a very quick demonstration showing the difference in the reception on a couple of different frequencies between two indoor antennas. These are both magnetic loop antennas. One is active. That's the small inner loop that you see in here. It's the MLA-30 plus. And the outer loop is a modified by me YouLoop. It's very popular now. It's a passive loop antenna. And what I did was I increased the circumference of the outer blue loop by a factor of 2. I went ahead and purchased some additional 1 meter long RG402 semi-rigid coax, and I extended the circumference, so the loop is actually twice as big as it was originally. This made a really significant difference on how well it receives VLF signals. For example, on WWV-B, I noticed an easy 10 decibels improvement in the signal to noise. It really helped receive that signal much better. So what I've got here, each of the loop antennas comes down into a common mode choke. That's one there, and that's the other one for the modified the WABYA modified YouLoop. These common mode chokes, I'll show some data in another video, but I went ahead and wound them on a type W core. It's an extremely high permeability core. I'm using approximately 20 turns of RG316 coax. I found it to be very effective, all the way down to about 40 to 50 kilohertz. So that being said, right now the antenna is basically pointing east and west. It's bidirectional, and we'll go ahead and show you the switch between the two on a couple of signals here. The receiver that I'm going to be using, this is just a SDR. It's SDR Play. Nothing special. And right now this is really a jerry-rigged configuration so that I can rotate it inside the house here. Alright, so here we have the SDR receiver. It's the RSPDX model. I've got the modified passive loop antenna set up on A, and we're not having too much trouble receiving WWV-B. S meter really can't be trusted. It's not an absolute reading meter, but for what it's worth, it's showing about S5, and the signal to noise hitting about 30, 31, 32 dB. So let's switch over to the active antenna, MLA-30 plus. I'm going to have to make some adjustments because that's an active antenna, so there's a lot more gain. So we'll go ahead and make some adjustments, and as you can see, there's no reception of WWV-B at all. And it's pretty much the same during the daytime. Right now the local time is a little bit after 10 o'clock. About 10:20 p.m. So let's switch back over to the passive antenna. There we go. And what's pretty neat is I'll go ahead and I'll rotate the loop 90 degrees. We'll show a little bit of front to side rejection here. Alright, so now we're slowly turning the loop, coming around to the southwest, and we're coming up on south, right about there. Well, actually that's not true. Let's see. There we go. That's pretty much on the side right there. So we went down to S2 to S3, and it's just barely visible. And we'll go ahead and rotate it back around. Yeah, it should be someplace right about there. WWVB is about 1,040 miles due west of my location here in the state of Indiana. So let's find some other signals. We can compare the two. What you'll see is that the MLA-30 plus antenna starts to catch up in performance to the passive loop someplace around the 40 meter band, approximately, someplace around 6-7 meg. They equal each other about there. Below those frequencies, the passive loop outperforms the MLA-30 plus. At higher frequencies, however, the MLA-30, being a smaller loop, outperforms the bigger passive loop. So it's kind of a neat arrangement. Tomorrow we'll go ahead and mount this setup outdoors. This is right now the loop is about I would say about 7 feet above ground level outside. It's inside the living room. We've got a lot of electronics inside the house running, so I'm sure the noise floor, once the antenna's outside, could be a little bit lower. Alright, let's hunt around for some other signals here. Alright, I thought I would put this little clip in. It's about 1:45 or thereabouts in the afternoon. Definitely not the best time to be listening for WWVB. We've got the antenna just leaning up against the TV, which still has electronics running in it, so I'm picking up all kinds of trash, I'm sure. Well, we're basically pointing to the west, and you can see there's WWVB coming in, so even in broad daylight, the modified W8BYA modified YouLoop does pretty good. I've actually heard it much louder during the daytime. Today the conditions seem to be quite poor. It's generally at least 10 decibels louder than what it is right now. And just as a comparison, we'll go ahead and switch over to the MLA-30 plus. As you can see, there's not a trace of it there. Well, there's a very, very light trace. That could be it. It looks like it's off a little bit in frequency, but clearly you can see the passive antenna wins hands down at these low frequencies. So anyway, just want to show you what it's like during the middle of the day here. And I'll put all this together, and what'll be really fun then, I think, for my next comparison, once I get this outside, will be to compare the MLA-30 plus and the passive antenna to that rotatable 40 meter dipole that's up at 70 feet. That should be a lot of fun to see how a little tiny loop antenna compares to a full-size antenna that's properly a little over half a wavelength above ground. So, alright, let me go ahead and get this posted. Alright, here's a station on 24 kilohertz. This is a US Navy station up in Cutler, Maine. Pretty good signal strength, S5 to S6. We've got a few birdies floating around. And you'll notice when I switch over to the MLA-30 plus, you'll notice some of these birdies will get a lot stronger. And you'll notice we completely lose the station from Maine. And all we're left with is a huge birdie. So down even at lower frequencies, huge difference between the two antennas. The MLA-30 plus, I would say, is not useful down at these very, very low frequencies. Alright, so let's find some stations maybe up at just a little bit higher in frequency where the MLA-30 plus can actually receive. Let's see if we can find the station in Puerto Rico from the U.S. Navy. Alright, here's the station from Puerto Rico. Went ahead and rotated the antenna. Matter of fact, let me show you the front to side. Slowly moving the loop, coming around to the east, and right there we're broadside to it, and you can see there's no signal whatsoever. So even at 40 kilohertz, the modified lengthened YouLoop antenna is still pretty directive. And we switch over to the active antenna, the MLA-30, and there's just not much there. I should point out that this is not actually a real YouLoop from AirSpy. This is something that we picked up off eBay from Asia, so it's a knockoff, and we went ahead and modified it. Anyway, let's move up in frequency and see what else we can find. Alright, here's a non-directional beacon. We're up at about 277 kilohertz. I tuned it in a little bit off frequency to make it easier to hear the tone, the CW tone. This is ADG right there from Adrian, and that's it's about 100 miles to my northeast. It's a low power beacon, about 25 watts. So this is with the passive antenna. Let's go ahead and switch over to the MLA-30 plus. Let's see, there we go. And it's just not there. And the bias T is on. Let's switch back over to the passive antenna, and there it is. So let's keep moving up higher in frequency. There were tons and tons of other non-directional beacons that we could have stopped at, and of course there's plenty of military signals much lower in frequency, but there's no point in showing that the passive antenna can hear them and the little active antenna cannot. We've already established that. Now let's keep going higher in frequency. Alright, so here we go. This is a station from Maniwaki, Quebec. It's another non-directional beacon at about 366 kilohertz, and you can see it just coming in and out of the noise. Right now, the fades have got it pretty much in the noise. Every once in a while it pops its head out. But this is on the MLA-30 plus antenna. And a few minutes ago it was actually a little bit louder, a little bit stronger I should say. Still couldn't hear it, but the waterfall was picking it up, and you can see even here there's very, very slight traces of it starting to come through. But if we switch over to the passive antenna, there's no doubt definitely in a QSB null right now. The station was actually quite a bit louder. You can see right there it's starting to come up. There it is. Let's switch over to the MLA-30 while the band is up right now. And just ever so slightly trace of it. So now let's keep moving up, getting more interesting. As you can see, the MLA-30 plus is starting to gain sensitivity as we move higher and higher in frequency. Alright, so now we're up in the broadcast band. We're up at 650 kilohertz. This is WSM out of Tennessee. And we're on the passive antenna, pretty much looking at that station. What's interesting here is we've got about 48 decibels of signal to noise according to SDR console here. We'll see if we can, there we go, still holding focus, so I'll leave it like that. And it's averaging about S9 on this meter. Now you can't always go by the S meter here, because watch what happens when I switch over to the smaller active antenna. So S meter is about S9 and about 48 dB signal to noise. Now the S meter is still not too far from S9, but the actual signal to noise dropped at least 6 to 7 decibels, and you can actually see the noise floor increased. So you can see, switch back over to the passive antenna. I'll turn it down a little bit. So even in the broadcast bands, the active antenna is starting to come alive. It's got sensitivity, but still doesn't match the signal to noise or the absolute sensitivity of the modified passive loop antenna. So that's at 650 kilohertz. And while we're on the passive antenna, let's go ahead and rotate it sideways. We'll see what kind of rejection we can get. Right about there. Pretty much put it where it's pretty hard to hear, right about there. So the modified loop antenna really is really does even better here up in the broadcast band. Now let's go up higher in frequency, see what else we can find. Now actually, let's just go to a couple of stations I know. Let's go to 760. This is WJR out of Detroit. And let's see. There we go. There are all these people who are like, yeah, I like the mouse. Fine, so continue to do it. Fine. But don't pretend that you're doing it out of some level of alright. Let's switch over to the active antenna. So here we're peaking, looks like about 53, 54 dB of signal to noise, S9. And we just switched over to the active antenna, and you can see the noise floor increased. Still about the same S meter reading, so the strength is the same, but that's deceiving because the actual difference between the noise floor down here and the peak of the carrier signal is much less on the active antenna. So let's see if we can zoom in a little bit so that we can force. There we go. There's about 40 now. Let's switch over now to the passive antenna. So passive antenna is still coming out ahead. Alright, here we are on a 160 meter band listening to some CW. We're on the passive antenna. Let me quickly switch over. Now we're on the passive, or the active antenna. And you can see it's pretty much holding its own, averaging pretty close to the same signal to noise. Although if you look at the noise floor, it does drop, but that's because this is a passive antenna. The active antenna does have an amplifier and it does raise the noise floor, but it if we look at the difference, at least according to SDR console here, we're peaking anywhere from, well, I don't know, 45 to 50 roughly. That's hard to tell on the CW signal, but that's on the passive antenna. If we switch over to the active antenna, it's not far below. There's a little bit less of a difference between the noise and where this signal peaks. Let's switch again. Pay attention to the noise floor and where about this signal is here. I'm going to switch back over to the passive antenna. So I'd say the passive antenna still is a more quiet antenna, and actually on 160 meters it's doing a little bit better job than the MLA-30 Plus. I'd have to copy this guy's call to see where he's located. Let's see if we can rotate the antenna real quick. See if we can get a direction. Oh, there we go. He's definitely south of us. Down south. He definitely picked way up when we put the antenna north and south. So now let's switch over between, this is the passive antenna, and here's the MLA-30 Plus. Again, not so much of a difference, not as big of a difference here between the noise and its peak. So I would still give the edge over to the passive antenna here that we modified. Let's keep going up in frequency. Alright, let's take a real quick look at WWV on 2.5 meg. We're currently pointing at it. Here we can see we're averaging about 46, 47 dB of signal to noise. Really can't pay attention too much to the S meter. We really don't care how strong it's peaking here. We got to look at the difference between the noise and this peak. So, yeah, 44, 40 to 45. Let's switch over to the active antenna now. So you can see there's a pretty considerable drop. You can hear the noise level come up. Seems to be a lot more fading. Overall, a much weaker signal. We'll switch back over to the passive antenna. Yeah, much better signal to noise, stronger signal. So that's at 2.5 meg. Let's keep going up. Alright, so here we are on the 80 meter band. We're just shy of 4 megahertz. And loop is pointing north and south. Right now we're on the passive antenna. And you can see, get an idea of the noise floor where the signals peak up here. And if we switch over to the active antenna, we'll let them start talking again here.
Not you. Oh, Don's on his new microphone now. Yeah, Alan, this is that microphone, that desk mic. It sounds good.
So they're actually very similar. This is a passive antenna.
Maybe a little bassier. Yeah. Sounds good. Well, that's it. That's what you hear in there. You run the box?
And this is the active antenna.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I'm about.
Now we're going to go to the passive. Now these guys are not talking regular enough. See if we can. Alright, so here's the passive antenna. That's the active antenna, the MLA-30. So really, if you look at the signal to noise, how much the signal is peaking above the ambient noise level here. It's like it's peaking about S7 on there. Let's go to the passive antenna. It's about the same. The difference.
Yeah, copy that. Are you copying there, all right? Yeah, you're up, the band is, I guess
So,
the band's playing pretty
looks
good
like
right
around
now.
the 80 meter band, the two antennas are starting to get pretty close to each other in performance. Let's check WWV on 5 meg. But looks like right there about 4 meg, possibility that the two are starting to get pretty close to each other. Alright, so here's WWV at 5 megs. This is on the passive antenna. And looks like fairly decent signal to noise. Let's switch over to the active antenna. And it looks like it's holding its own. Looks like they're pretty much even. On a strong signal like this, pretty hard to tell any difference. Let me switch back over to the passive antenna. There's the passive antenna. I think what I'm going to do is try to go up frequency a little bit and hunt for a weak signal. And this is back on the active antenna now. I think the signal to noise is pretty much equal here on 5 meg. They're evening out the two antennas. Alright, so this is automated weather forecast. This is Gander at 6.604 meg. So I picked this because it's not real strong. So this is on the passive antenna. Now let's go ahead and switch over to the active antenna right now. Might even be a slight edge on the active antenna here. Let's switch back over to the passive antenna now. Right now. That's the passive antenna. And we're back on the active antenna. So really it's kind of hard to tell much of a difference between the two here at 6.6 meg. Let's keep going up higher in frequency. Alright, so here we go. We've got a station at 9.33 meg. Let's turn this down a little bit. And right now we're on the active antenna. I believe this station is coming from Maine, state of Maine. And it's now just after midnight local time. So signal to noise is not too bad. But notice what happens here when we switch over to the passive antenna now. Drops way, way, way down. So we definitely have identified breakpoint. The active antenna clearly outperforms the larger passive antenna down below 9 meg. Probably a good frequency to check would be maybe some signals on the 40 meter band. I'll bet you the two are probably that's going to be the breaking point right around 40 meters. But clearly here's the passive antenna, and there's back on the MLA-30 plus. Let's find another broadcast station here up around 31 meter band here just to confirm our findings. Alright, so here's a very good verification signal. The loop is currently pointing up toward Europe and Middle East. I'm not exactly sure where the station is located. I'd have to look it up. 9.420 megahertz, and just after midnight local time here, 0404 UTC. But this is the active antenna. Now watch the dramatic difference when we switch over to the passive antenna. All but completely gone. Slight carrier signal seen. Trace of modulation, but that's about it. We'll go back to the active antenna. So clearly, frequencies here at 9 meg and above. Let me turn that down. The little loop, the MLA-30 plus, clear winner up in the mid portion of the HF band and higher. This is the clear winner. Let's go back down frequency, maybe someplace around the 40 meter band. We'll find maybe a broadcast station, so it's because it's transmitting continuously, and we might be able to identify it. We'll try the two antennas there. I suspect that may be the break point where the two may be equal. Alright, so here we go. We're just above the 40 meter amateur band. We're at 7.325. Not sure where the station is located. Fairly strong. I rotated the loop. Looks like it's coming in strongest with the loop pointing north and south. So possibly the station, possibly Cuba or Central or South America would be a good guess. But I was actually wrong. I thought the two antennas would be pretty close at this frequency. But notice what happens here when I switch over to the passive antenna. We're right now on the active antenna. Now we're on the passive antenna. Pretty significant difference. So the little loop is really showing its colors here on the 40 meter band, 41 meter band, no, 40 meter band. Let's go back to the active antenna here. So that's pretty impressive for a little active loop. Let's go lower in frequency. Let's see if we can find the break point where the two are more equal. Alright, here we go. We're at 6.165 meg. The loop is pointing north and south, and we're currently on the active loop. Very, very nice strong signal, plenty of signal to noise. There's some fading going on, but let's switch over to the passive antenna. There's the passive antenna. It actually this may be a good breaking point where the two are about equal to each other. Looks like we're getting 40 to 50 decibels of signal to noise. Let's switch back over to the active antenna now. There's the active antenna. Yeah, it looks like. There we go. Open up the bandwidth. Geez, they are wide. Alright. Well, that makes sense why the signal is much stronger when I point it down to the south. So anyway, this is the passive antenna. Let me turn it down a little bit. This is the passive antenna. Now let's switch over to the active antenna right now. It's actually a little bit weaker. Quite a bit weaker actually. Let's switch back over to the passive antenna right now. So Anyway, looks like around 6 to 7 meg is the break-even point where the two antennas seem to have about the same sensitivity with each other, the same usefulness. So clearly down VLF, very, very low frequencies, the passive antenna, the YouLoop that I modified by increasing its circumference, has clear major advantages over the small active antenna. But for general shortwave listening, for frequencies above, say, 40 meters, 49 meters, say here at 6 meg to 7 meg, I'd say that's about the break-even point. The MLA antenna, MLA plus antenna seems to do a much better job. So anyway, hope this was of value. Tomorrow we'll go ahead and get the antennas outside and we'll run it through another common mode choke indoors, and that'll help cut down some of the spurs and some of the inadvertent signals that we're picking up, and we may see a additional drop in the noise floor, which will be very, very nice. Plus getting this antenna away from all these noisemakers. All of these LED bulbs contain switch mode power supplies. I'm not sure if everybody was aware of that, but every LED bulb that you use has a switch mode power supply, which are just notorious for generating RFI and hash and noise that we pick up. Plus any pulse width modulated controller for motor control, speed control, things like that are really horrible for generating noise. So it'll be good to get the antennas out of the house, and it won't be far away from the house, but certainly will be better than right inside the living room here. So, all right, WABYA 73. So I need to ask the signal at 66.666 kilohertz. According to the database, it may be a Russian time signal, time standard. Unfortunately, I've got some kind of RFI issue. I've got a lot of man-made signals right around that frequency, but I am hearing what appears to be 1 second pulses. I'm wondering if anybody out there can confirm if this is the time signal from Moscow, Russia. That would be pretty cool to be receiving it here with the indoor magnetic loop here from the Midwest part of the US. I look forward to moving the antennas outside, and maybe I can eliminate some of this hash, some of these spurs that are occurring right on this frequency, which is very unfortunate. But it sure does seem to be a coincidence. They are occurring at 1 second, 1 pulse per second. So anyway, it's coming up on 1 a.m. in the morning, and I just thought I'd throw that in there. Maybe somebody can help me verify if somebody who has heard this signal knows that if what I'm getting sounds the same.